You guys doing today? Welcome to Broadcast Minds. It's really exciting to be back here and bring some of the biggest thinkers in the industry that are talking about what's next in broadcast and changing the definition of what it means to be a broadcaster. We're going to jump right in and bring out our panel. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. I'd like to start off with our moderator, Jim Louderback, who's a venture partner at Social Starts. He's the editorial director of the VidCon industry track. He has 20 years experience in consulting and technology and media. He was CEO of Revision 3, which eventually sold to Discovery, but I like to introduce him as the guy who really discovered TriCaster when he was at Ziff Davis and actually did the first TriCaster review on the planet. Mr. Jim Louderback.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you very much.
All right. Our next panelist, or our first panelist, we've got three amazing panelists today. We've got Marcus DJ Wheat Graham, director of Twitch Studios. He is a globally recognized game commentator and internet personality. He oversees various live programming initiatives for Twitch, regular community shows, and also E3 and TwitchCon. Help me welcome Marcus Graham, a.k.a. DJ Wheat. And backstage, he told me all the secrets of how that name came to be. Our next panelist probably needs no introduction. He is the co-anchor of the Today Show, CEO and owner of Roker Entertainment. He is a 13-time Emmy winner and is a leader in new media. Al recently launched Roker Media, a creative consortium combining talent, production, brand building for live streaming platforms. Let's give a big round of applause for Mr. Al Roker. All right, and our final panelist for this year's Broadcast Minds is the biggest guy on the panel, I have to say. He is the VP of Production for NFL Media after more than 20 years at the Madison Square Garden Network, where he launched actually the first HD network in the United States and actually in the world. He moved on to the NFL, where he is really leading the charge to strengthen their digital strategy, launching NFL Now. Help me welcome Mr. Dave Shaw. Thank you very much. Jim, I'm turning it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Let Dave get out here for a minute. So this is how it's going to work. We're going to talk for a little while, and then there are a couple mics up there, so we have time for questions. We'll be holding those to the end, but we're just going to jump into it. So, each of the folks that are up here have a career that's kind of spanned both traditional and digital. I've spent a lot of time on both sides. So I'm always curious about, well, traditional television and digital video, digital first video, web video, internet video, whatever you want to call it, are they merging? Are they coming together? Are they staying discrete? And, Dave, I'm going to start with you at the NFL because you guys have been a bastion of traditional media and you're doing a lot on the new media side now. How do you see these things merging in your world?
Well, I think content is content. When it comes to the NFL, everybody wants to see the games, and that's the driver. But when you see a good play or there's some big thing happens on the field, everybody wants it. So it's going to hit all the media. So we have our own social media team right now. We have our digital team. We have a traditional network team. So we have the NFL Network, but we feed everywhere. We're feeding. Everybody needs to see those pieces, and you're going to want to see it on all the media.
Yeah. Do you envision a world where you can see something, a game, on every screen and every service and every device, or is it still?
Absolutely.
Does that happen? Yeah.
It's already happening. Yeah, we already are doing that right now. Just on Thursday Night Football, actually, Amazon Prime just jumped in with rights besides the NBC and CBS for the Thursday night package. Yeah, it's a great way to distribute worldwide.
So Al, on your side, you've been traditional media stalwart in many ways, but you're now producing for every glowing rectangle out there, it seems. How do you see it all coming together?
Well, I think television is a screen, whatever the screen is, whether it's an iPad or an iPhone or your Android device or your laptop, it's television. It comes out, it spills into your home or your car or whatever. So, but I think what's interesting is that, and what Dave was saying, I think a lot of what becomes viral, what drives viewing, tends to happen on traditional television. And then migrates and becomes viral, and it's the play you want to see, or the concert or Alec Baldwin playing President Trump, or Kate McKinnon as Hillary Clinton. Those are the things that went nuts, but they all started on traditional television.
Well, yeah, but you could look at the things that didn't. I mean, Keyboard Cat did not start on traditional TV.
No.
I'm not sure it could have. Maybe it could have. But when you think about it, it's really an interesting thing to think about. Do you think TV remains the big thing, and a lot of these other platforms are smaller and more niche, or does it all just become one set of things?
A camera captures it. It doesn't matter which camera it is, and then there's a distribution outlet, and it doesn't matter which distribution outlet. I think what Gal is saying, it's how it gets out there. We have a lot of behind-the-scenes things that are being shot all the time. Something in the locker room could be the viral thing. It's not actually the play sometimes. But if you got a camera and it's shooting, it could get viral.
Yeah. Now, Marcus, you're very digital first here. I mean, Twitch is pretty much, you guys born and raised on the digital platforms.
Yep.
How do you see this? And when you look at it from the angle that you come from, is television even something you want to be on?
So it's a tough question to answer, because we traditionally have more long-form media, right? People are engaging for 3, 4, 5 hours at a time. Now, granted, people are sort of devouring digital media at the same rates. You might binge a series on Netflix or spend a weekend watching whatever. But we don't necessarily have a flow that goes from the digital platform that is Twitch to something like just traditional television. Esports is about the only area, competitive gaming, where we've started to see that crossover, and we've actually seen a true blend of sort of the digital and television coming together.
Yeah, but the television audience is minuscule compared to the audiences for some of the esports online, right? You're talking hundreds of thousands on television versus millions for some of the league championships and other things like that.
You're right, and I think that has a lot more to do with sort of the activity of esports being a very digitally focused thing and sort of growing from the organic world that is digital, whereas the television audience is kind of being introduced to it.
You know what comes to mind hearing you guys talk and thinking about viewing behavior changing is attention as well. Do you think about, in the early days when we had 3 networks and you watched one show and you waited for your show to come on, your attention was focused on that show. Now, I see people watching esports and then they've got Netflix going on another screen, or they've got their phone going on. How do you deal with this multi-attention world? Al, what do you think about that?
Well, like on the Today Show, we plan for multi-screen viewing. There's the broadcast, but then we have the Orange Room and our social media, and people are constantly monitoring that. It's not just lip service. We have 3 full-time people during the show, just by its. We have a whole massive digital staff, but during the show there are 3 people just monitoring and going back and forth. And I'll throw to this young woman, Brittany, who's kind of running things, and say, okay, hashtag battle right now, boom, we'll throw to it, and you see people respond to it like that, and so they are at the ready. So I think that there's a real synergy that can happen, and both can coexist very nicely together and help each other.
Yeah, and Marcus, what do you think about people and 3 or 4 or 5 hours watching an esports experience? There's other stuff going on. That attention is split in many different ways, right?
Yeah, Jim, honestly, I think it has a lot to do with the viewing habits of a new generation. Yep. I have an 11-year-old. I really like to study how he watches and how he sort of plans his own programming for, before, after school. And I think it's changing. I think that the attention spans, might seem shorter if we're having a conversation in person, but the ability to multitask and kind of pay attention and pause here and then resume on this device later on, we have more options. And the appointment viewing, while I still love it and I think it's great and it drove a lot of success of television, has kind of been bent a bit in the digital world.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of appointments left except maybe sports, right?
Yeah.
And do you see your audience as being still extremely focused on that as it goes on? Or are you still dealing with a attention span sort of environment when the games are being played?
I think you find in all sports, viewership is going down a little bit. Esports are rising for sure. NFL happens to be a brand that actually is doing very well still. People are still watching it. I think it's just because you got your team each week, that you kind of like. So the NFL is doing pretty well. You got fantasy that's doing really well. But your second screen is all fantasy stats, you know, and you can go back and see that same play over and over again, you know, and there's all sorts of things that we're playing to that audience as well.
Yeah, fantasy's a big deal. I play a lot of fantasy, so I hear you. I want to talk a little bit about production and how you produce for different outlets and different screens, and whether you produce once and distribute across all these different services, devices, and screens, or whether there's real intentional production happening for different places. And Al, let's start for you, because you guys work in one of your ventures. You build stuff for Facebook, you build stuff for Twitch.
Yeah.
And you build stuff for television. How do you think about those different platforms? Are they individual things, or is it just one thing and I'll put it out?
No, I think you look at each individual platform. When we did our cooking show with Justin on Twitch, I mean, this was a program that the interactivity was very important. You know, people wanting to interact with Justin, who's a gamer but also a great chef, and people could. There was opportunity for commerce, and that was very important to build to that platform. Whereas we do the Never Settle show with Mario Armstrong, and that's on Facebook Live, and that's a different experience. Still interactive, but the commerce part of it not as big a deal. But it allows us, and again, not to too much of a plug, but being able to use NewTek's TriCaster. I mean, we are able to produce a quality live talk show that's kind of inspirational, but be able to have that interactivity with it as well. So I think each platform, and then for broadcast, it's just the same. You're producing a show, and as far as we're concerned, quality is an important part of it. People, just because it's on a smaller screen, don't expect it to look like crap. They want a certain level of professionalism in there.
Yeah, and we were talking about that with esports as well, and the idea that it's esports, it doesn't have to be good quality. I mean, that's crap. It's got to be good quality, right? It's got to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain criteria that esports fans tend to, it's like we want to see 60 FPS and the highest resolution that we can. Don't cut away from the action, right? What you see beyond the game sometimes can have less effect on the viewer. Maybe it's not the best camera shot. Maybe the esports event doesn't have a jib. There aren't these sort of wide shots, and that's okay as long as they can see, the game. So it changes the way people are thinking about it, but that does not mean people are not still trying to raise that bar.
Yeah, and Dave, for you guys, you have just so much content that pours in, from the game itself to the pre to the post to, you've got the draft coming up.
Yeah.
How do you think about deploying that across different platforms?
Yeah, it's well, the digital platform they'll have every pick for the draft. Let's just say every pick will be on there live. We're not going to necessarily have that on the linear channel on the network. It's certainly in the later rounds we won't. That's one piece. We've got the social team kind of interrupting sort of our traditional on the red carpet show. They're going to put a ball pit out there.
I was going to say, you said something about a ball. So wait, tell us about, you guys, anybody watching the draft this weekend, Thursday? So what's this ball pit?
Yeah,
You brought it up.
Blew me away. I'm starting to feel like a dinosaur a little bit. Because every time somebody comes up with a crazy idea, you go, really? So a ball pit is, what we used to do when we brought our kids back to McDonald's years
Chuck E.
ago.
Cheese, right?
Yeah, you throw them in the plastic balls, and they're putting one of those out at the red carpet, which is usually a premier event.
So who do you expect to actually take advantage of this feature?
They're actually
of the red
hoping
carpet?
the future players are going to jump in there and get a few of them out there. I was suggesting the ball pit happen in a different area.
Gets hurt.
But what?
I hope nobody gets hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll be
What
bad.
could go wrong?
What could
could
wrong?
possibly go wrong with a ball pit?
Please.
Exactly.
Especially if you've got an open bar.
Let's talk a little bit about development when you think about developing a show. Marcus, do you guys have a traditional development team at Twitch that actually goes out and thinks about, how am I going to develop this? What's it going to look like? How are we going to deploy it?
We do, under the banner Twitch Studios. It's something that we've been doing now for about 3 years. Sometimes it revolves around events, sometimes it's original programming, and a lot of what drives us and what we're thinking about in development of a new show is what Al mentioned earlier, which is that interactivity.
Right.
A lot of times we look at the platform that is Twitch and we're like, yeah, the video player's neat, but really the secret sauce is the chat, the interaction, the way that communities are built. And we're always thinking about that aspect of it. What can we do in production that would enhance the interaction of this show, that would let a viewer have a more intimate moment with someone they enjoy watching or with other people that they're sort of participating with. So it's kind of the core of just about everything that we do and think about.
And do you think about other platforms as well when you're doing it? Do you have folks thinking about how is this going to instantiate itself maybe on Snapchat or on Facebook or Twitter? Or is it really we're all about Twitch as a platform?
I would say when it comes to the live programming, we're certainly all about Twitch and what's happening there. I think that obviously after the acquisition of Twitch by Amazon, we started to think about, okay, maybe we have a new content flow that's available to us, and how does that fit in? We've sort of already been experimenting in that world, and also sort of bringing the Amazon world to Twitch and doing things like the pilot program and streaming in a marathon format on Twitch. So we're still figuring that out. But again, it's a new world to be discovering and exploring and playing in. So we're really excited about it.
Yeah, and so Dave, talk me through what your development process is like. I mean, use the draft as an example. New space, it's not in a theater, it's all around town. How did you think about developing that in a multi-platform world so that it would be great on television, but that it would also be great on all the social channels that you're on? And how'd that come about?
Yeah, the draft itself is hard as it keeps changing venues, and Philadelphia will be a little crazy this year. They're not having a theater, the traditional theater. They're building this big stadium sort of right on the steps of the Rocky Steps, so it'll be kind of interesting. So, but traditionally, we're going to cover it the same way. We're still going to put a set there. The team tables are sitting in Franklin Institute, and we're going to have a set there. We have a reporter stage that will have a set at Logan Hotel. But then it's our social team. We have a social team that actually develops their own programming. But we have our production team has kind of really unified the groups now. It used to be we had a digital team, we have a digital feature team, we have a network feature team, and we have the network broadcast. We're now working together with the production team, really just lays it all out. And we met twice a week for the last probably 3 months. Wow. So just going through what everybody's doing on
So a single development team that then works on all those different platforms and instantiations.
Exactly.
On your side, Al, you've got one organization that's developing television programming, like Weather Hacks and Coast Guard Alaska, Girl Starter, and then you're building for Twitch and Facebook. How do you think about developing these properties? And is it a single development team that thinks about it? Is it multiple? How does that work?
We have one team that, and we look at each project and what's the best platform? Can this live on Twitch? Can it be on Facebook Live? Is it better for Periscope? Is it a cable operation program? For example, Girl Starter started as a digital and it's its own platform. We've teamed up with this group, Girl Starter, that has their own website, their own platform, their own social media. But they were trying to they wanted a television program. They came to us, and we created this program in conjunction with them that happens to be branded entertainment. But it's going to be running on TLC starting this Friday at 7 o'clock. It's a female millennial version of Shark Tank. And the winning team ends up getting $100,000 to jumpstart their business. So, but there's a lot of digital content that lives on our site, lives on their site, and will get syndicated out as well.
So a question on that: when you're, so I assume you've already shot all the episodes and done it in the can. Did you have people creating and gathering footage as they were shooting it for Snapchat or for Facebook or Twitter or any of those platforms or YouTube? Or did all that happen after it was all completely shot?
No, we planned it that it would run, that we would produce that concurrently with the production as it went on, because a lot of this stuff was happening, and I'm very proud of the fact that all of this, the documentary type programming we don't stage. Whether it's Coast Guard Alaska, whether it was the DEA, any number of the shows that we do are pretty much run fairly linearly, and that's what happens is what you see. And so we knew we couldn't go back and get more. So that was part of the production plan, to capture what we would need for digital so that we had it.
So you stick a social producer on one of the Coast Guard boats up in Alaska as you're rolling out?
Well, no, we just put as much, look, we produced so much for each episode that, I mean, we could have probably produced hours and hours of digital programming that was completely non-redundant from what people saw on the Weather Channel. It was just a matter of, what the Weather Channel was willing to pay for.
Right, yeah, right, exactly. What they would do. So, I mean, I think what I'm hearing is that really development can happen in a single group, but you need that. Do you have experts that are experts in each of these different platforms? Or do you think one person can actually know how to build all of these platforms? Anybody?
I hope the folks on my team are experts on our platform.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I'd like to think that's why I hired them. But yeah, I think like it's being an expert in the community and really understanding the audience for us.
Yeah, how about you guys?
It was a balance to me. We have traditional producers who are used to producing the game or the studio show, all our programming that leads up to it. And there are some people who are much more into it. You have to go young. You have to go with what's going on. Our Snapchat team, we have a deal with Snapchat that it just produces content for Snapchat. So actually, NFL gets paid for having this team. So we have a team of 10 people that are just feeding Snapchat. That's all they do all day long.
We're pretty lean, but we have, I think, a lot of great multitaskers, and some great things come in over the transom. This Never Settle show with Mario Armstrong. I've known Mario for years doing the Today Show. He's a digital lifestyle guy, but he's always had this dream of doing this show. And I said, Mario, well, if you can get some sponsorship or whatever, we can team up. And he beat the bushes, and he FedEx Office sponsors this thing, and it's a terrific program. But we knew it wasn't built. It wasn't going to be on a broadcast or cable channel. That this was really, in a sense, the digital caught up to what his vision of the show was. The idea that you could, we've been, how many years? I'm probably the oldest person on this panel. From
We're not going to have a competition on
no,
this
we're not
right
going.
now.
But I remember, the dream of interactive television first launching with this thing called Cube
Yes.
in Columbus, Ohio. Well, it's still out there, but it's now been realized with Twitch and the digital platforms and everything that's out there, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and it's changing so quickly. I mean, 2 years ago I was at South by Southwest, and the big thing was Meerkat.
Yep. Exactly. Come on, you were a fan of Meerkat. Actually,
I liked Meerkat, but it was like, oh, it's dead.
Yeah,
it was like somebody killed Timon.
I have a great Meerkat sweatshirt that I still wear, so it's not completely dead yet. It lives on in my closet.
But I appreciate you like the Timon thing.
So, yeah, I'm interested as you produce this. Are you doing any square video or vertical video, or is everything still pretty much 16:9?
Yeah, still 16:9 or square. I mean square for
Square for Facebook,
Live,
right?
and
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we were talking about the transition to HD back in the back, and where we went from 4:3 to 16:9. I mean, we used to at ZDTV and have the guys with a little masking tape to mark off what was
Yeah, right.
Do you say, how are you handling 16:9, and then how are you handling vertical video in this world?
You just do. You got some things that are shot when you're shooting it on your handheld device. It's coming in vertical. You just deal with it. I mean, the 16:9, it can live. It's converted. It's all sorts of devices. They pick their shots that are going to be after the fact in post, but we do a lot of post.
And Marcus, you guys think about different frame sizes, or are you pretty much looking at the 16:9 or 4:3?
I think that where we start to think about potentially where frame sizes might change is when we have things like mobile broadcasting or easier use of broadcasting, where the industry is sort of accepting that 4:3 is something that people are they like, they watch, etc. But then we also have to think about how do you present and also have the chat interaction there? Because if you don't have that, then you kind of are missing one piece of it. So we have thought about it. I mean, obviously, most of the site is going to be 16:9, and that's what most broadcasters use. But I think in the future, thinking about mobile and some of the ways that you might present media, could be some variation there.
I want to move on and talk a little bit about delivery and distribution and how you all think about that. Al, do you have a windowing strategy across social video and live and broadcast? Do you think about windowing, or is it just put it out there and let everyone see it?
Well, I think, again, you've got, not every program or not every piece of content is made for every platform. I'm going to be honest. I've got a 14-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 30-year-old. And my 18-year-old, I mean, all she does is Snapchat. That's it. And I keep looking, and I'm thinking, I don't want to be a cat.
Right.
But it's gone right away.
But yeah, I know. But you know, and so have we produced for Snapchat? No, we haven't. You know, and what we're looking at that. But I think the idea is that, you know, it's not a square peg that fits into every hole, and so you have to, you know, some things are going to slip by, and you're not going to be able to produce for that with that program. But something else will come up.
Yep. And Marcus, on your side, are you? I mean, you're all doing Twitch, but there are other platforms out there as well, and Amazon has opened up, I'm sure, a new world for you.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it's exciting just to like learn what distribution flow could look like, as it, you know, could originate on Twitch but potentially be offered on Prime Video, on Amazon Video. There's a number of things that they're doing on that side too, with channels, with, you know, some of the subscription things they have for the add-ons. But it's still pretty early for us. You know, we're not necessarily making multi-million-dollar original content on the platform. We're thinking more about how do we take existing content and what makes sense, and also what audiences are we reaching if we do that, because we're obviously dealing with two very different audiences and two different demographics. So I think there's still a lot of lines that have to be sort of connected before we figure it out. But what we've seen already has been really promising and great.
And then, Dave, you guys, I mean, you were streaming live last year, I think, at games on Twitter. It was Yahoo before that. It's Amazon this year. How do you pick those partners? What do they, I mean, it's not just money, I'm sure, right?
No, I think it's really
money?
just money.
Is it money? Okay, fine.
As far as that went, it was
money.
the Thursday.
All right,
that was
never
pretty much-
mind.
that was the Thursday night football package, but really they put it out to bid, quite frankly, on that. But we definitely program. We have an NFL Now OTT channel that we put out, and we have a studio that really is it's a green screen studio with a TriCaster. We'll put the plug in there for you. And that thing just pumps 5 days a week, where we're doing wraps around certain pieces. They do a lot of original content that is just kind of fun stuff, a little stuff that's a little off color than from what our normal channel is. You expect, when you watch NFL Network, you just expect football, and you expect a lot of it, and you're going to hear talking heads talk about football. You're going to watch replays of it. You're going to watch our NFL Films archive. You're going to see all sorts of great things on you got it all there on the NFL Now platform, where you can pick your own stuff.
And you know, you talk about OTT. I mean, that's one of the other, I think, really untapped sources at this point. Like right now, we have a partnership with Business Wire, the PR firm, you know, that puts out press releases, and we created this thing called BizWire TV. And it's you know, it lives on their website. They syndicate it out, but it's also an OTT app that every Thursday and every Sunday they send out what was the biggest stories. And it's a fully blown, like 7-8 minute interactive newscast with our host Jordan Rolling, who does a terrific job. But again, it's still produced like it's television, but it's that little OTT square you tap on your phone or on your laptop, and there you go.
Let's talk a little bit about the future distribution, because and this is really for everybody. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. You know, it started out, we had 3 networks, and we went to cable, and we had 500 channels with nothing on, and you know, it sort of was coalesced around 7 or 8 big producers, whether it's NBC, Universal, or CBS, Viacom, or Discovery, or whatever. But it seems like now we're moving into this world where I used to call them the 4 horsemen of the stream apocalypse. You know, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, maybe Apple, maybe Microsoft. AT&T and Verizon are kind of trying to get up into that group. Where do you guys see the future of digitally delivered television or video entertainment? What's it going to look like in 4 or 5 years? Who wants to start? Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, well, I think, you know, you got your choice, right? You got all these things, if it's OTT or not, there's going to be people still bundling it. You still got your packaging, you still got your live. It's different than cable. You're not getting it on your cable. I think the cable companies will still be coming, and because it's still a great delivery service, but they're just going to bundle it differently. Hopefully you're not paying for what you don't want. It's the same age-old problem. It's just delivery, right? We just got a lot more choices.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you think, Al?
I mean, I still think at the end of the day, I still think whatever it is, and I still believe television is a viable platform. I mean, I think when you watch shows like The Voice or the NFL or any, you know, these live, when they do these live theater broadcasts, these are things that people still don't gather around the computer.
Yeah.
They still gather around the television. I mean, even something as simple as This Is Us on NBC, and not just because it's on my network, but my daughter, my 18-year-old, wanted to say, Dad, we have to watch this. And it's the one show that I still do. We don't watch anything else together live on TV week to week, but we watch that show. So I still think that there's still life left in the traditional broadcast and cable distribution, but there's going to be stuff that runs right alongside it.
Yeah, I just want to say I love what Al said because, I mean, I can't imagine a world without television, right? I don't produce content for television. It's all digital, but I love my TV. I think that also what Al said is really interesting is that people gather around the television. Well, what we're doing is we're just allowing them to gather virtually in a way, right? The chat is bringing exactly that. And that does lend a lot more towards the younger and the newer generation and sort of the way that they're experiencing social media and their social relationships online. So Al's right. It's like someone many years ago, I'm sure, said, we'll be reading all of our news on the internet in 10 years. Well, yeah, but the newspapers, magazines, still there, and I think they're always
probably more important today than ever.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a nostalgia. I think, again, I'm being very anecdotal because I only know the kids that I live with. But I've got my 14-year-old boy. I mean, he's a big gamer. He loves it, but yet he still makes appointment television. He watches Nickelodeon and the Thundermans. And when there's going to be a new Thundermans episode, he's there at 8 o'clock on that Saturday night. My daughter still watches linear broadcast television, and yet she consumes stuff like crazy, online. So I think there's this parallel path that's running right now with these younger. I don't know, what do you call people who are, I guess, teenagers?
Gen Z. Gen Z.
Gen
Try
Z.
Gen Z.
Okay,
Yes.
there you go.
I don't, and I've got my own focus group of one. My 17-year-old son doesn't watch television at all, and it's very interesting to see how changing ways of consuming content. But in the end, it's just moving pictures on a glowing rectangle,
It's
right?
just a matter of which screen it is, right? So it doesn't matter. We're just given a lot more options to put on that screen.
Well, so let's talk about new options, new platforms that are out there. We talked a lot about Facebook and Twitch, and put your thinking cap on and start thinking about what's the next great platform. Pick another. What do you think the next big platform is after Snapchat?
Well, it's funny. They always say, this is going to be the next big thing. I mean, remember how big 3D television was going to be? Wow, how many people are walking around with those goggles on? Virtual reality. And again, showing my age, but I find it very isolating, and weird to be this. You're seeing great stuff and unbelievable content, but you feel you're floating. I think augmented reality in whatever form it's going to take is the next big thing to me.
I think the virtual reality has a place. I think where I think it's neat on the virtual reality, it isn't necessarily watching an NFL game. It's the two-way piece. We saw a really neat piece on. You could put this 360 camera in the middle of a concert. You could put it in the middle of your e-gaming. You could put it, multiple places, and suddenly you're in an environment. And it's a great environment. Wearing glasses gets a little heavy. Who wants to really wear it for too long? It's short attention span. But if you do it like in the Igloo, or you do it in one of these kind of screens, or you got the two-way. We just saw this really interesting display that Hyundai did, I guess, with the military, where the military guys were actually watching Super Bowl. It happened to be NFL related, but they were watching the Super Bowl, and the family could sit there and watch with the military in Poland. And they were actually watching the game together.
Experiencing it together.
And so that's to me where VR is. If you can get that two-way, I'd love to be sitting there talking to my grandchild, in the same environment. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, and I think, look, technology advances, and so we're going to get better screens, we're going to get lighter headsets. My feeling on VR is I think about live. I remember a producer I worked with said, live takes you places you can't go. Well, VR takes you places that it's impossible to go, right? You can't be on the Fantastic Voyage riding through the bloodstream, but VR could take you there. So where are those places? Like, it would be impossible to be on a football as it's kicked through the uprights. But VR supposedly could let you do that, right? I don't know if I want to do
Depends
that.
where you put the
but
camera. You really still got to mount that camera somewhere, right? I mean, I rode with the Blue Angels on a VR, which was very cool, or you can go through war zones where if you put it on the back of the Jeep. okay, that's all great. I don't necessarily want to be there.
Yeah, right,
but,
right.
But putting it in the middle of the football field will probably be a little tough unless we're hanging it or we have to be thinking about how to do that.
Yep. And how do you guys at Twitch think about VR?
Well, certainly we think about the viewing experience. There are a lot of gamers that are playing virtual reality games or do virtual reality, activities, and I think that's normal because it's kind of coming from the gaming world. We're seeing more content produced in VR. Going back, I have to say I'm with Al a little bit on augmented over VR, at least now in the immediate future, because I'm not sure how we get the market penetration that's truly needed to really see VR kind of go nuts. I mean, not a whole lot of folks are investing $700, $800, $900 into sort of the complete package, and then we have sort of the phone-based VR. I kind of think of it in the same vein as like a home theater. Would anyone have built a home theater if they hadn't gone to a movie first? I kind of feel like we need some really solid location-based VR for just the general public to consume and appreciate and go, wow, I have to have one of these in my living room. So we go back and forth and we think about it a lot, but obviously we want to support the gamers and the streamers that are using virtual reality, but we're not quite sure where it all fits in quite yet.
Yeah, I just went to the first VR theater. They call themselves First VR Theater in Amsterdam, where you can sit down and actually everybody has a headset and watch the same thing. It's kind of interesting. And there's a company, Sliver TV, that allows you to get inside of some of these esports games and get a VR, like for example on Dota or something like that, where you can plant yourself and sort of watch the game as it unfolds around you. Seems interesting. Does that seem like a competitor to you guys? I mean, what do you think about that?
Frankly, having worn a headset for quite a few hours myself, I'm gonna have to say that viewing experience is pretty limited. I think after a while, we physically as human beings can just not take the weight and the sort of right in your eyes. So
you're in an isolation tank.
yeah, a little bit. So while I'm very genuinely interested to see where they go and what kind of reaction they get, it's not necessarily for me, and I'm waiting to see who that's for.
It's a different environment. It's just a different experience.
Yeah.
It's for a game or any kind of live sporting event. The best coverage is that director who's cutting all these cameras, and that's what you want. You don't want to work, right? Too much as a viewer.
Right, I know. You want someone to just unfold, tell the story.
Yeah, right.
All right, so Al unfortunately has to run in a couple minutes because he's got a plane to catch, so he's got to go interview some people in LA. I've got one last question for you guys as a group, and then we're going to turn it open to nobody's standing up yet, but we will have people asking questions. So look 5 years, 10 years out, what does the future of video entertainment look like? What's the biggest surprise going to be at NAB 2027? Who wants to start off?
2027.
10 years, okay, 5 years. 2022. What's the biggest surprise? NAB 2022, we're all going to be talking about not 3D TV.
Well, I'm hoping the quality of the pictures comes together. I mean, I hope the 4K HDR, standards get settled. I'm hoping that we can get to an environment where we're actually producing the highest quality of video. But past that, I'm not going to go.
Marcus, what do you think?
I mean, I have to agree. We're obviously sort of limited on the quality that people can broadcast based off a lot of the broadband connections that are available. So very interested in technology that can sort of circumvent that a little bit, as well as we want to think about the future. So shooting in 8K now, it makes a lot of sense for potentially what you might do down the line. And so I think the standardization, as Dave said, is really important. And it will be nice to see where that all goes.
Yeah, and when we have 5G and faster networks, do you see that 8K actually working over?
Well, maybe while we go there,
I don't know about that.
We got to hit that 4K first, but might be a while.
Okay, so I'll look out in the future. 5 years from now, what does it look like?
Just hope I'm working. Other than that, I don't really care.
So 5 years from now, your prediction is you will still be employed.
I hope so. That's the plan. It's fun. I always remember, again, I remember, and to your point, Marcus, that the idea that I remember my first neighbor who brought home a color TV, the wow factor, and that's what I think. Whatever comes out, I think we always want people to go, wow, look at that. That's, something that you haven't seen, something that just kind of blows you away. The first time you saw HD, it's like, wow. Yeah, and that's, whatever it is, I think we all want to be part of that.
Yeah, so maybe it's AR, maybe it's VR, maybe it's something we can't even imagine. But all right, we
I
got
got a fax coming in right now.
round of applause for Al Roker. Thank you, Al.
I got it. Thanks, Al.
We're gonna let you get off and get your plane. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, folks.
And questions, please. If you have questions, line up behind the mic. Otherwise, I got a lot more questions I can ask as well, but I want to give you guys all an opportunity to ask a question. So, anybody? Go ahead. Go ahead. Question right there.
Hopefully on topic still, but I wanted to ask David about the Raiders moving to Las Vegas. I am a local here, so I'm fired up about it. Just curious about the opportunity with you, and I know, in the past, the NFL has had a lot to say about, players around certain venues in Las Vegas. Do you feel any restrictions about that? But mainly just the excitement about the team coming here.
I think it's great for Raiders fans. I think there are certain teams that make sense to come to Las Vegas. I think the Raiders do. It used to be that no sporting team would be even thought about coming into Las Vegas. I mean, I was at Madison Square Garden for years, who owned the Knicks and the Rangers, and they couldn't do any betting in the sports books, because they also owned Caesars Hotel when it was owned by ITT. It's changed. The complexion has changed. I think it's great. I'm the production guy, so we just cover it.
What's the production environment here in Vegas like? Have you started thinking about how you're going to start producing that stuff?
To me, it's a game. It's just like any other production. We'll get there. We'll get the cameras set up and the microphones set up. I think this city is ready to embrace it, clearly.
Oh, yeah.
How long till the draft comes to Vegas?
Yeah, right. The draft is moving city to city. That is one of the things that they are trying to do. I have no idea when the draft's coming or the Super Bowl is coming, but it's a pretty common theme that you've seen where they want to get into the venues.
Cool, we got a question over here.
Hi there. You were asked about what will be new in 2022. So maybe a question from the other side. What will stay for sure? That the fundamentals that will be there, they are here right now and they will be there. So we can focus on them and work even harder.
Good question. What's going to stick around in 2022? What are we still going to be like, yep, that's still a big part of what we do?
I guess maybe it's my turn to drop, a NewTek plug, because I think about what has sort of brought me to where I'm at in the digital world, and we were using sort of because we didn't have money. We didn't have the money to have a television studio, and we needed an alternate. And it is those types of things. It's that technology that has allowed anyone, if they want to pursue it and make their own content and create, and that's how we're seeing the next new stars formed, and that's how we're seeing the next great writers and actors and actresses and producers. And I think, like, if that is not still there, then not only will I be shocked, but I think that it will be an incredible blow to just the world of content creation. It's gotten easier over the last 10 years, and if it doesn't keep getting easier, well, I don't think it'll go away, but certainly it will maybe not grow as much, and it's been growing like wildfire lately.
What's still going to be around?
Well, I think content is content. So, when you're covering whatever you're covering, whether it's the esports or live sports, you need cameras, you need quality. Everybody wants the next level. If you think about a sports coverage, on a football game, if you're not seeing 6, 7, 8 angles of that same play, that's become the expectation. It wasn't that way just a couple years ago. If you're covering any event, if you're covering a concert, you're covering anything, you need the highest quality, no matter what the distribution outlet ends up being. So I think you're going to see. We keep looking, whether it's 4K, 8K, whether it's HDR, high dynamic range, and 1080p is awesome. Do we really need to change out all our transmit? I don't know if it's necessary, but that's what I hope gets settled a little bit, standardization. But content is content. You still need to shoot all of this.
Yep. Question over here.
Yeah, this question's for Dave. So last year, the NFL restricted some of the teams releasing highlights during the games. I was just curious, what did you suspect was the relationship between digital highlights and your broadcast product?
Yeah, I'm the production guy for the media group.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not the lead guy. You know, when we talk about that, there's rights. You know, it's a complete rights fee, and I mean a rights. When it's a network that it's paid a lot of money for that rights, they have the rights. As soon as that game is over, it's all NFL rights. So NFL owns it. You know, every right for everything that's a live feed of that game. Behind the scenes, if you're at the game, you know, you're taking a picture of yourself, that's all different. But, you know, I mean, I think that's what we have. We have a rights. We have this whole archive, and we're getting into what we've had since NFL Films was the first one to actually create these rights back in the 50s, you know, and they're finally digitally archived. We have all this film. It's ridiculous how much film. They just turned over to video just a couple years ago. And all this, we're going to digitize it, and they're digitizing it game by game, and it's going to be awesome. We're going to make it available to consumers and customers at some point.
How are you digitizing it? What are you using? Is it doing it internally? You have
It's still the process, so we're still finalizing vendors and et cetera, but we've now decided that we're going to go that route, and we know it's going to be a few years by the time we're completed.
It's a lot, yeah.
There's a lot sitting in that vault.
Interesting. We have other questions out here? So, Ed, you know, and as you guys think about questions, I want to talk a little bit about sort of delivery platforms and, you know, think about what's next. You know, some people say it's Musical.ly, some people think Lively, there are others out there. Are there other distribution platforms, social video platforms, or other on your horizon that you could look at and say, wow, I really need to pay attention to those people? Marcus?
Well, I think at Twitch, you know, we're also like looking inward a lot, right? Because I think that it's really easy to be happy with your platform and content and say, okay, great, everything's good. But you know, that's not the case at all, right? How people are viewing online content, digital content is changing. How people are making it is changing. How it's archived is changing. And you know, if we're not thinking about evolving along with the viewership and the users, then there's something that we're, you know, definitely doing wrong. So while we do a lot of comp intel on all of the competitors because they come up with great ideas too, I think that at its core, we just always have to be thinking about, well, what are we not offering? What needs to be offered next? What is someone else doing that we might be able to do better? And more so looking at that.
Well, and to that point, you know, Amazon buys you guys, and now we've got cooking shows, and we've got, you know, Bob Ross, Happy Trees have come back. And do you see yourselves as evolving beyond just a sort of gamer-fueled platform to being more general? How do you think about that?
I think that when you create a site for gaming and millions of people come to it, something is going to happen, and you're going to realize that these million people are not just excited about gaming. Right. They love television, they love movies, they love comic books, they love drawing, they love whatever, theater, art. It's a number of things. So as we've seen the interest levels of those particular buckets increase, that's when we've said we need to support those verticals a little bit more. Now, you mentioned like the Julia Child and the Bob Ross. We've used content as a strategy to launch new verticals. Bob Ross was for creative. We had Julia Child for food. Just today, Cosmos Marathon is streaming to sort of kick off science and space on Twitch, because we're seeing a lot of educators, people who play science and education and space-based games, and there's a demand for those verticals. I think not so much in that Twitch would be a programmed Thursday night, it's, you know, this reality show on or this sitcom. We've seen a lot more success in the sort of recycling of old content to create, I guess, of viewing experiences that you experience together that you probably wouldn't experience like by yourself at home.
So in 2021, when Amazon buys the rights to all the NFL games, are some of them going to show up on Twitch?
We'll have the 50-year stream. It'll just go like on nonstop. Yeah.
Yeah. Dave, what do you think when you look at other platforms out there? Who are you thinking about? Who are you worrying about? Who are you like, man, I got to figure out how to get video on that thing too?
I don't ever really get too worried. I mean, we get worried just about making sure that we're reaching the right audience. I mean, the audience that we want to hit is that 18 to 49. That's the advertising dollar. So you want to get the younger audience, and how do we reach them and make sure that we do? Not everybody wants to look at the old NFL game, or any sporting event. How many times do you really want to go back and look at a game that happened? Everybody wants to see the play that happened yesterday. Everybody wants to see the big event that happened either today, yesterday, a minute ago. So we really gear towards that. And then we have all sorts of, we're just the longest pregame, on the NFL Network.
I know.
But when you go to the digital platforms and you go to NFL Now and what we're getting to the digital content that we'll have stored there, then it's up to you. You can go back and pick those specific games. If you're a Cincinnati fan and you want to go back and see that one game that you really wanted to see, we're going to give you that option.
Let's talk about community for a minute, because in the old days of broadcasting, it was really pushing it out there. We had a megaphone, and that's all we did. Think about early days of Monday Night Football. It was a megaphone. And now you guys at Twitch obviously built on top of community. But I want to start with you, Dave, because every player really sits at the center of their own community, and they have their ability to do their own community broadcasting. And some stuff you don't want to do, some stuff you do want to do.
Yeah.
How do you handle that kind of a community, and how do you think about it as a sort of a two-way conversation in what is, a game is very much of a one-way thing, but there's a two-way conversation going on as well?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You've got the local teams who put a lot of their own content up, and we try to work closely as the league, work with the local teams on the personal content. But a good example of that, I think, is we have this show we have Deion Sanders, and on Sunday nights we have it's just a game day. What is it? Game
Day Live.
Game Day Live. Well, it's the night version. Game Day Prime. It is.
Prime. Okay.
We changed it to Prime because of Deion
It's
Sanders.
Deion, right? It's prime time.
The biggest thing that he wanted to do was he wanted to go to his other players, and he wanted to talk to them directly, and he wanted to go Skype. And I'm going like, okay, again, the dinosaur. Why do we really want to get into this platform and bring it into our broadcast? It's not going to mess it. It's awesome. The programming and the content is just awesome. He gets to these players right after they played the game. They see it's Deion calling. They'll take it, and they're shooting the video. Where are you? And they'll just kind of shoot. It's awesome. So you adjust, and that audience, it went up big.
Yep.
It actually had big rises in that.
So what about during the game? I mean, there's, obviously you can't communicate with the players during the game, but there's so much that happens. I mean, talk about fantasy, right? That community exists there. People are connecting back and forth. Does that community change the way you produce a game eventually?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think coverage of the game is coverage of the game, but I do think we've instituted next-gen stats, is what they call it. Every player now has a chip in their shoulder pads, and we're taking stats off of it. And every broadcaster has the rights, is now being handled that. I don't think they've expanded that yet enough, but you're going to see it in all sorts of gaming. You're going to see it so you can be live playing against people. But it also is it's going to produce all our real-time stats. I mean, the first time we saw this, when we tried it, it was like, okay, what did we get out of it? And they didn't know what to do with it. So we had these players, and what you find out is that all these guys huddle together at the huddle. Then they open up, and the linemen, they kind of battle the linemen. Receivers go out, and the quarterback goes back. So you didn't really find a lot of what to do with it yet.
Right.
So they're still developing that, and I think, but just the fact that we have chips in their shoulder pads and we're pulling in that data, you're going to see a lot more live.
Big data comes in.
That's
NFL.
awesome.
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome.
Marcus, you guys live community, right? I mean, you started that way. It is core to everything you do. How do you see that developing? And then I've got another question for you on that.
Community is the one thing that you can't foresee how it develops, because you've got this master community that you're a viewer on Twitch. You're a part of that community, but then each individual channel is creating their own communities, and there's community of broadcasters, which you could kind of say are networks in a way. But everything we do, we think about community, and interaction is a big part of that, right? How do you create these communities overnight? a lot of it has to do with sort of the intimate broadcast and chat interaction that broadcasters and viewers are having. I used to, when it was kind of like explaining Twitch to people 3-4 years ago, one of the things I would say was like, especially in the esports world, imagine if you could go to Michael Jordan's house and just watch him practice in his backyard, and every once in a while be like, Michael, why'd you shoot like that? And then he would answer you, and that would be a pretty amazing experience. And that is kind of the experience that Twitch has delivered virtually with a lot of the top esports players and now a lot of the top personalities. So I think that we kind of are always thinking about how do we improve that community experience, how do we improve the way people build the communities, share things with other communities, etc. It is certainly not something that you expect to kind of become an expert in when you are creating a video platform for video distribution. So it was kind of like a pleasant surprise, and I think it's really driven a lot of the success for Twitch.
Do you think traditional media gets community?
I would like to think that in some way, shape, or form they have to, right? Because social media is a form of community. If you are a follower to this social media account, then you're kind of a part of that community. It might be a little bit more distant than, say, sitting in a chat room for 2 hours every day, talking and being on a first-name basis with some of those folks. But I think about, I watch Survivor, big Survivor fan, and I kind of smile every time I see a tweet come up. Because to me, I'm like, television is still very one way, right? Like someone is probably really excited that, Bobby, my tweet is up there. But imagine if Jeff Probst was like, yeah, Bobby, that was an amazing blindside, wasn't it? Right? Like that's the content that I really love making, and I think like what you're finding on Twitch. So, it's something to kind of always consider as far as.
So what do you think about getting that kind of community into a game broadcast? I mean, do you see, it's not Phil Simms anymore, Tony Romo actually interacting with the audience as he's calling a game?
Yeah, I can see calling a game interacting. I think that's realistic. I think you just, we're very particular about preserving the game, and that's the rub, which is hard. But what blows me away is we have Madden, all these guys who play Madden live, and we actually have a show that watches players playing Madden. And I'm going like,
does that show do well?
It does okay. There's people who like to watch it, which
a lot of people play it too.
Gamers are playing it, and that's a way for community. If you're not one of the 32 team fans, you can cherry pick your team. I mean, we got the fantasy, so you can pick your own teams, but you also could be playing. You could be playing Madden live, and my guess is when we get with our next gen stats and you start interplaying that with an EA Sports or something like that, you'll be able to play against it. And you can put yourself in there, in the game that's happening live.
I don't know. I think there's such synergy between you two guys. I'd love to see, not necessarily just games on Twitch, but is there players on Twitch that end up on the NFL Network maybe, right?
Yeah, right.
You could see that happen.
I think there's been definitely some Madden broadcasters. Winner of the last year's Madden Challenge streams all the time.
Yeah, the Madden Challenge. I mean, we got right in the middle of that. They do their Super Bowl right at Super Bowl, so we covered it live. We actually did. We worked right together with them.
Cool. More questions out here. Got Twitch. We've got NFL. So I'll cap it off. Just have a minute or two left. Think about your jobs, right? Think about that, and not that we're all going to be employed, but how in a couple years, how will your job change? Marcus, how's your job going to change in, so I'll give you 3 years from now. 2020.
I think for myself and for Twitch Studios specifically, it is kind of figuring out and ironing out what we talked about earlier, which is like understanding the live to SVOD and TVOD flow that exists between Twitch and Amazon. It consists of finding a way to produce content that we feel like really resonates with the Twitch audience, but then goes beyond it to the Amazon audience, to the NFL audience, to the voice audience, or whoever that might be. But I think it will also be how will technology, how will interaction, how will new social platforms change the way we're producing that content? So I would like to say we're just making a lot of content, a lot more original content, telling more stories about the people who are using our site, and hopefully it's still here, maybe 3 years.
How about your job? How does your job change in 3 years?
I think it's I think I'm pretty simple. It's, you know, the game coverage will be the game coverage, but I think it's all that surrounding programming that we're talking about, how to reach it, how to get it distributed, making sure that we stay up with the technology. It's the technology that you have to stay up with, and you have to stay in tune with what the audience is watching. And I think we stare at that all the time.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you guys very much. Dave Shaw, Vice President of Production from NFL Media. Marcus Graham, Director of Twitch Studios. And thank you guys as well. Have a really great NAB, and we'll be running around. So thanks, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it.